I told you before, but I'm a licensed New York tour guide. So what better place to take a tour with a licensed tour guide on a cold January evening on the weekend than a basement, baby. We're in the basement. It's time for Tour Time with Tom.
Hello,
You guys are gonna learn some stuff.
I am
used to
your
point at stuff and
guide.
take people around. Hey, there's me pointing more stuff. I'm a pretty cool guy. Hey, I like to party. Vaping, cool. There's a dabbing rat. All right. All right, so look, normally I'll do different tours, different little lectures about different topics, mostly neighborhoods here. But I think that this month I'm going to do something a little different because we just had New Year's Eve here in New York. New Year's Eve is a very important part of the city of New York. So I'm going to take you on a little tour of some of the sites and history associated with New Year's Eve, baby. Huh? Pretty cool. You're going to learn some stuff. I'm sorry. That's right, New Year's Eve. There's more to it than just watching Anderson Cooper get drunk with the guy who made Real Housewives. We get the culture we deserve here, guys. You keep watching it, they're going to keep making it. All right, here we go. Let's start from the beginning. Why do we even celebrate New Year's? We celebrate New Year's because of the equinox, believe it or not. So, the Babylonians, the Assyrians, we're talking like 2000 BC. They used to celebrate the equinox, the vernal equinox, in March because that was the beginning of spring. That was the new year. That was something to get excited about. How cool is that, right? So that's what they would do. They would celebrate this, and here, keep this moving here. The vernal equinox is when you have the full day is split in half, completely in half. Same amount of sunlight, same amount of darkness. There's only 2 times that happens all year. That's right, the equinox, huh? You guys thought equinox was just a place where you pay $400 a month to take 6 selfies, baby. That's right, it's more than that. So, it's in March, right? Well, it's going to change, and it's going to change with the Romans. The Roman calendar changes this. This guy named Julius Caesar. So it started to kind of move it around a little bit. It was Caesar in the year 46 BC. He's just getting back from all of these important military campaigns. He had a lot of confidence and everything. He just goes right in and he says, we're going to take the calendar and we're going to change it into a solar calendar. Right? Not a lunar calendar, which is what it was before. I had AI make me a picture. There were no pictures back then, and AI made me a picture of what it looked like when he did that. That's what it looked like when he went into the Roman Senate. So he makes he adopts the solar calendar, right? And he also changes the new year to celebrate the new year in January, which is named after Janus, the Roman deity with the 2 faces there, huh? One looking back into the past, the other one looking forward. Isn't that crazy? Look at that. And you got the weird-ass head with 2 faces on it, huh? You got this guy. This is the original, business in the front, party in the back right there, huh? That kind of really creepy right there. I don't know how they sleep, but whatever. Anyways, that's Janus, January. That's why it was moved to January. So we had the solar calendar starting then, but it had to change again. And by the way, just so you know, there are still people who use the lunar calendar to celebrate New Year's, or at least partly base it on it. They use it in Judaism, in Islam, and in China. The Chinese New Year, partly. China. 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 Sorry, I don't know. I can't. That's my Trump impression. I'm sorry. All right. So, you guys, by the way, you guys are interested, January 29th, 2025, you can go down to Chinatown, huh? Celebrate Chinese New Year. It's going to be a good time. You should go check it out. Make a day of it, baby. Go down there, get yourself a bubble tea. Get yourself some dumplings. Buy yourself a Gucci handbag. Hang out. Take it in, man. That's a very important thing here in New York. All right. Now, this is where it starts to change, where it starts affecting New York City. So this guy, Pope Gregory, in 1582, he basically says, we are going by the solar calendar starting now. He also tweaks it a little bit and adds a little bit of time onto it because it wasn't technically 100% accurate in the solar calendar. Seasons didn't line up perfectly with the solar calendar that the Julian Roman calendar had added in. So this guy adds it in, Gregory adds it in, and guess what? He was Catholic, obviously. So guess who picks it up? Spain, Portugal, France. They were like, great, we're adopting this right away. But the Protestant countries were a little bit like, I don't know. So it took them a little longer. In fact, it wasn't until 1700 that Germany adopted it. And then in 1750 was when Britain adopted it. So it took a little bit of time. Britain in 1750 was when it started to affect the colonies. You guys know where we are. We're in New York, which is named after the Brits. So the Brits bring it here starting in 1752. By the way, when they adopted this new calendar, this is a big deal, man. 1 year in 1752, they hopped. They literally had September 2nd and then just jumped to September 14th. You woke up the next day and were like, hey, it's almost 2 weeks later. You show up very early for your next appointment. That's basically what happened. So they started here. So this is a picture here of Trinity Church, the second incarnation of Trinity Church, because in 1698 they installed a bell on the first one, and that was when they say they started to celebrate around the church, right? So you had this new year. Starting in 1698, they had the bell. They'd ring in the new year. Oh, holy shit. You use the bell to ring in a new year. Wow. So they kept doing that. In fact, all the way until 1801, which is when you have the present incarnation. I'm sorry, 1846 when they had present one, but 1801 they have records of the actual New Year's bell guy ringing. He was like a celebrity back then, by the way. He was like the coolest guy ever. All the way until the 1880s, the bell ringer was the coolest guy. He was the party guy. This guy. Are you kidding me? That was the party guy. But it got so bad that by the 1880s, they used it to celebrate everything, right? So like big events, like the end of the Civil War, they would ring bells for that. That was like one of the things they rang bells for. That's something to celebrate. The end of the Civil War. I mean, today, you kids today, you celebrate Prime Day. You know, get on board, celebrate the Civil War. So, 1880s, this becomes a huge party, right? People are going out there and getting drunk around the church. It's kind of sacrilegious, right? So one of the actual pastors, one of the preachers there, his name was Reverend Morgan Dix. Morgan Dix. All right, you high schoolers. I see you. It's a D-I-X, okay? Remember, Morgan Dix. Okay? This guy thought it was really sacrilegious, so he said, we're going to ban this. In 1893, he banned. It was that bad. It was that big of a raucous thing that they banned it in 1893. But people loved it so much that year, because they couldn't go to the church, guess where they celebrated? In front of Morgan Dix's house. They went and protested his decision by protesting in front of his house, and then the following year, he reinstated it. Huh? Protests work, baby. Remember that. Protests by people like that. That's what you can see a picture from there. All right. So, it's at Trinity Church. Next time you're down there, you'll know, holy crap, this is where they used to celebrate New Year's until the IRT was built. Now, 1904 is when the first line of the IRT, the subway, is built. This is one of the most important things to happen in the history of New York City. They built it underground. That's why it's called the subway, obviously. But it went through an area known as Longacre Square. Longacre Square was at the intersection of 42nd there and Broadway, and this was all horses and stables and carriages. It was named after a street actually in London named Longacre, because that's where they had all their stables and that's where they had all their stuff. And they wanted to create a commercial center here in Longacre, right? By the way, you can actually see the first station of the subway ever. The City Hall station is still there. It's right there, City Hall. You can actually, this is what it looks like, believe it or not. You can actually see it. It's closed to the public, but if you stay on the 6 train after the last stop and ride it, because it turns around using this station, you can see it through the windows, or if you go through the little middle of the cars, you can get a good look. Pretty cool, huh? That's a little secret. I'm not making that up. I've done it many times. Look, it's not technically legal, but if you have a police officer stop you or something, just tell them that Tom D sent you, baby. It's totally cool. It'll all be cool. Don't worry. All right, so this is where it gets interesting. So, like I said, they wanted to create this commercial center, right, in what it was then Longacre Square. What they needed, though, was commerce. One of the first big commercial developments they got was the New York Times. The New York Times building was brought there in 1904, which is where it got its name. What? Times Square is called that because of the New York Times? Are you kidding me? Holy crap. And just so you guys know, by the way, I was going to say that they actually started doing fireworks there, too. That was how they initially celebrated it. But they actually had to cancel it a few years later because they didn't want to become Florida. So that's what. But we'll talk about that in a second. But isn't that crazy? That the New York Times, that's where it got its name, Times Square, New York Times. You're never going to forget that. Do you not understand that? You're sitting there looking at me with dead eyes. If you didn't know that before today, you're never going to forget that for the rest of your life. You're welcome. Good Lord. Holy crap. Yeah. Hey, it ain't over yet, baby. Save the applause. Let's keep it moving. All right, here we go. Now, the guy who decides this is named Adolph Ox. This is Park Row, right next to City Hall. This is where all the newspapers used to be. It used to be called Newspaper Row because they were right next to City Hall. The guys with their little hats would come down, take the scoops or whatever, and go away. That's where he moved it from. His name was Adolph Ox. This guy was the guy who made the New York Times what it is today. He's the guy who came up with the slogan, all the news that's fit to print. He's the guy who moved it to Times Square. He's the guy who did a lot, including creating the idea of the New Year's celebration. By the way, Adolph Ox, he got his first job at a newspaper at age 11. He bought his first chunk of a newspaper at age 19. That's insane. And look, none of this is to say that people back then were tougher or stronger or whatever, like your grandparents would tell you. All right? If your grandparents ever started being like, Adolph Ox bought the first paper at 19, just be like, Dad, I will never own a house. My life sucks way worse. You shut up. We'll put you in a home. All right. Now, here's the problem. Like I said, they didn't want to become Florida. They changed the thing. They don't want to have fireworks, right? So what they do is they got to find a new idea. Think about that. Just from scratch, you got to come up with something new. Well, one of the things that was floating around was this idea of time balls. Grow up. Time balls, okay? Time balls. So, this ball here is actually in Greenwich, London. Ooh, pretty cool. What it does, though, is this ball actually goes up and then comes down at a certain time every single day, usually 1 o'clock, right? Being because to set people's chronometers. They're always in actual shipping ports and things like that. These are chronometers back then. This is what they used to basically navigate, and they went off of the time. Right? In fact, there was one at the U.S. Naval Observatory. Isn't that cool? This is the U.S. Naval Observatory in D.C., which, by the way, a little trivia, this is where the vice president lives. Hey, look at that, more trivia. You guys are learning all this kind of stuff. Holy crap, look at your faces, you freaks. All right. So, New York Times, they plagiarized this idea. They're like, hey, what a great idea, man. Bringing a ball down every year. Everyone's going to be on the same page. We synchronize, and then we live for the rest of eternity in peace and harmony. Damn, that's sick. So they take the idea. They make this ball. The initial one was only like 5 feet tall. They used like ropes to pull it up and down up till the 1980s. It was completely ratchet. As the kids say, huh? In fact, in the 1980s, they had one that looked like the apple. Oh, big apple. Isn't that cool? Look how cute that is. Huh? Very cool. 1980s. Look, all this is secondhand information because I was not alive in the 1980s, nor the 1990s, because I'm very young. And I can play very young. If you need me to play in anything, I can play very young. Very possible. That's not 8 years old. Okay. Anyways, now, what's interesting is this caught on. The time ball caught on. In fact, lots of places in the United States have copied it. Isn't that wild? In Atlanta, they have a peach that comes down every year. In Boise, Idaho, they have a potato. Yes, they have a pineapple in Honolulu. They also have a pineapple in Sarasota, Florida. But no one has ever seen it because no one there has ever stayed up till midnight. You also have other ones. There's a hunk of cheese in a city in Wisconsin. And there's even a beach ball that comes down and drops every single New Year's in Panama City, Florida. The beach ball drops, along with a lot of Molly, I bet. Okay. Now, it's interesting because it's kind of gotten out of control, by the way. There's all these crazy things. So just so you know, there's some like really interesting, like there's a moon pie sign that comes down every single year in Alabama. There's a peep like the little candy that comes down in Pennsylvania every year. This is crazy. There's a living possum that's dropped down in a cage every year in Tallapoosa, Georgia. Those are people who are not afraid. They are not afraid. Although, if there is one thing people from Tallapoosa are afraid of, it's probably what they drop every year in Key West, which is a drag queen. That's one thing. I'm sure that is probably something that scares Tallapoosa, Georgia. That is true. Every year in Key West, pretty cool. So you have all of these different copycats that have come up because it's so important. Now, in New York, you actually have places that also commemorate this time ball. This here is in South Street Seaport. I don't know if you guys have been there and you've seen this here. This is the Titanic Memorial, the Titanic Memorial Lighthouse. Isn't that cool? Look at that little time ball up there. Oh, now you guys know. That's what that's doing up there. The Titanic Memorial. Yep. Which, by the way, is there because the Titanic sank in 1912. because it was on its way to Chelsea Piers. That's right. You're welcome. Hello. Come on, look at this. You're going to be over at Chelsea Piers and you're going to use that damn fact. And you're going to remember this face. You're going to remember this face. All right, let's keep it moving. Now, this is another important part of New Year's here in New York. This man is Guy Lombardo. Now, Guy Lombardo was the man who kind of came up with the celebration in 1929. He started the big New Year's blast beach, or not beach, I was gonna say beach, the big New Year's like Rockin' Eve type thing. Not called Rockin' Eve yet, but it was 1929. And by the way, this American tradition of New Year's started by a Canadian. Guy Lombardo was Canadian. He was like, you guys may not know who he is, but he had all the hits. Like Searching for My Honey, or whatever, I don't know. He had this guy had 450 million records sold, man. He was kind of corny, but he sold 450 million records, right? He was pretty much Drake. It's pretty much, let's be honest. He was pretty much Drake. So this guy comes here, and he starts this kind of celebration in 1929 on the radio, initially at the Roosevelt Hotel, which you could see still, and also the Waldorf Astoria eventually, right? So this is also, too, where he got Auld Lang Syne. So this guy came from, like I said, he came from Canada now. Auld Lang Syne was written by a man named Robert Burns, Scotsman. This guy made it. His name is Robert Burns, right? You guys can see his statue. Oh, you guys go on a tour of Central Park. This is him, Robert Burns. Look at that, taking in sun, it looks like. He's taking a tan. This, you can point it out to your friends when you're there. Be like, hey, guys, that's the guy who wrote the New Year's song when you're walking down the mall. Anyways, the reason why he saw it and why he wanted to use Auld Lang Syne was because he'd spent a lot of time in London, Ontario, where there was a big Scottish population. Oh, Robert Burns. They used it at like their reunions and meetings, all kinds of stuff, right? By the way, London, Ontario, hometown of the Biebs. Huh? Hometown of the Biebs. Come on. Look at this innocent cherub. Huh? The loss of Justin Bieber's innocence really tracks the loss of the innocence of the United States, doesn't it? Unbelievable. Anyways. But you also have another thing, this is an interesting fact, Auld Lang Syne, always a very popular song, a very popular Scottish and European song. When the UK made their Brexit from the EU, the entire EU stood up and sang Auld Lang Syne to bid them farewell. That's some pretty messed up shit, man. They're like, all right, our economy's going to crap, let's just sing a song. All right, let's keep it moving. All right, now this is where we get into a new thing, baby. We got Dick Clark, huh? Now, Dick Clark in 1972 starts the Rockin' New Year's Eve to compete with Guy Lombardo. 1972, he starts this thing to compete with Guy Lombardo. Initially, it's actually hosted by Three Dog Night. You guys know them? You guys know what Three Dog Night is? They're the ones who sing, joy to the world, all the boys and girls, joy to the vision in the deep blue sea, joy. Yeah. That was pretty good, man. That was pretty good. All right. Anyways. They chose the first year. Then the second year was George Carlin. Then Dick Clark was like, you know what? I'll take it from here. And he took it, and it actually was pretty great. And it's continued on ever since in different forms. But by the way, Guy Lombardo dies in 1977. And by the way, he hosted for 48 years. That's a long time. He even said, when I die, I'm taking New Year's with me. That's how much of a part it was to him. But the joke's on him. Because we're still doing New Year's, and he's dead. Rotten hell! But, guys, I think that the amazing thing, though, about all this is that even today, we were just talking about the beginning, you had good old Trinity Church. Huh? Trinity Church here in New York was the home of the New Year's celebration all the way until when it was a colony. Isn't that crazy? You can walk by it today and still hear the hugs and kisses, huh? And then it makes its way to Times Square, through world wars, through depressions, people celebrating and finding hope for the new year. All the greatest and biggest milestones, all celebrated here in New York and mirrored out to the rest of the world. The world looks at New York and says, hey, man, there's a sign of hope. Hey, man, they're celebrating. We should celebrate. Hey, man, they're looking forward. We should look forward. And even today, it continues today into the new millennium. We're in modern times, which is why the Rockin' Eve has become the first ever show to be hosted and produced by an android. Ryan Seacrest. Happy New Year, baby. Huh? I don't know what to call that. Isn't that an amazing thing? Amazing thing. New Year's Eve. I hope you guys all had a good New Year's Eve. We got more show, though. I'm up here rambling like an idiot. I got to keep this going. Are you guys ready for some more show?